This is another video, another dinner table conversation. And today I really wanted to talk about this because this came up with some of my coworkers. I really want to talk about what it really means to be in a sphere of, when you're in a sphere of influence, like when you're around people who are influenced. And I remember we were talking about certain celebrities, and a person happened to come up, and I was like, yeah, I know that person because, well, I don't know them personally, but I'm like, yeah, that person. Oh yeah, I think it was like Selena Gomez or something. And I said, yeah, like my pastor and his wife at my previous church in California, yeah, they know her. They're like best friends. Like our pastor's wife is best friends with her. And I was like, yeah, I've seen her before at church. And they're like, oh my gosh, you know someone, you've seen, I'm like, guys, I don't know this person. I don't know this person. I just saw her time to time at this church. And, I'm like, yeah, it's fine. And so we were talking about the fact that, that they love her music and things like that. And I remember Selena Gomez from as far back as like Wizards of Waverly Place or something like that. But yeah, I know of her. Those kinds of things. And also that brought me back to like a moment where when I was in college, I remember Justin Bieber came to our church because he happened to be in LA at that time, I guess. And I remember seeing him and I was like, oh, like, am I seeing correctly? And I was like, yeah, that was him. And I remember two girls from my from school. Then, like the following week, I remember going to campus. And I was in the student activities, and there were two girls that came up to me, like, "Oh my gosh, Jazz, I saw you on Justin Bieber's Instagram about church." I just happened to be in the background, I guess, maybe, I don't know. And they're like, oh yeah, like I feel like I should go to church now and go to your church now. And the other one was like, yeah, I'm Jewish, but like I probably can get with Jesus or whatever, And I was just like, and the thing that kind of bothered me in that scenario is that, I get it. People are fans of these kinds of people who make, music that, a lot of people like. And whatnot. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know any of these people. I just happen to be at the same church. They happen to be at the same time. And I knew a friend of mine, he no longer goes to that church as well. Like we both kind of, I think throughout the pandemic, a lot of people kind of like went different directions. But I remember before he was volunteering on my team, he was on another team that involved confidentiality. Like they had to sign an NDA and everything because they were dealing with a lot of high profile people that came to our church that we didn't even know about. And they have a separate section. I was explaining that to someone in my workplace, and they were saying like, oh my gosh, like I don't understand like why they get to, like they get their own section. They don't get to, like worship in a church like everybody else. And the idea was, and I had to explain, is that when you are a person of influence, sometimes it can be distracting. Like, when you're trying to worship, and the way it's like with Christianity is we're here to worship God, and it is idolatry to put any other human being before God. It's part of it's the number one 10 commandment, basically idolatry. And yeah, so sometimes people, it can be distracting. And I feel like, especially when you're trying to be a person of influence, is you kind of have to learn how to be around people who are of influence, because it's going to happen at some point in your life. If you want to be a musician and you're thinking about all these potential people you might collaborate with and all these different labels you might get with or different producers, you kind of have to know how to approach these people in a way where, or when you're in situations where you are able to talk to these people and, at least build a conversation, you want to kind of keep the humanity in it. Because like I said, one of the things I feel like is always in any scenario is not inappropriate is being a fangirl. And but when I being like that was like being hysterical and like, oh my gosh, it's so-and-so, that could be annoying. But really and truly there are people, and sometimes you have to learn how to treat them like people. Sometimes we forget that people are not larger than life. They may give the impression that they're larger than life, but they're, at the end of the day, human beings are dealing with issues that we have. And I feel like sometimes, even for me, and I remember, because my organization, we're working on as I mentioned before, working on a secret project that will not be revealed until most likely the end of the year or January at the latest. And I was very excited that I got to get a couple of people to collaborate with me. I can't say their names, but one of them is a YouTuber that I have been following like for a long time. And I'm really excited for that collaboration to come into play. And I remember like when this person said yes to collaborating with me, I was just like, on the other side of the phone, I was like freaking out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this person said yes, I'm gonna do this, And sometimes like there might be like, there's like sometimes feelings of inadequacy, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this person's like, what if I mess up, or what if this happens, and whatever. And you're creating like ways to kind of discourage yourself after you just got someone who is of influence to work with you. And sometimes I feel like, and I was talking to my dad about this, sometimes it's like, I know I'm fangirling and I'm like, oh my gosh, in my mind privately. But at the same time, my dad is like, if you plan to be in a position where you're going to be around people of influence and you're going to be able to talk to people, you really want to make sure, you really want to kind of like be able to know how to handle yourself in those kinds of situations, like keeping your cool, that's just kind of like the end of the day is keeping your cool, and not in every scenario. Like I said, like some people like, it's, I feel like in a way, it's not a bad thing to say to someone, hey, I'm actually a really big fan of your work and I like it because X, Y, Z, or I really, like being specific. I feel like when it comes to giving compliments, I'm very much let me be specific, like for example, if I ever met Namika in my life, Namika is one of my favorite German artists. She's fantastic. I recommend you check out her music if you're really into German music or you really want to learn German. And I have recommendations on our website, and you can find that in the description. Yeah. So we have all of these, like, I love her. Like, if I were to meet her in person, of course I'd be like, hey, I am a fan of your work. I really loved your album, Kewalu, because a lot of songs in there, I really feels like you're telling a lot of stories about your heritage, because I think she is German by nationality, but her ethnicity is in Nador, which is in Morocco. And so a lot of her songs really go back to that. And I did a couple of videos on that are coming up on our nonprofit channel, specifically where I analyze her lyrics. And I'm like, like I said, in this scenario, I'm like, yeah, I really love that album because a lot of your songs really tell stories about who you are. And I really am attracted to artists who have music that makes me want to know who they are, and really giving specific reasons to, like I said, get to the humanity versus like, oh, I'm just such a big fan. It's like, yeah, so like it was everybody else, all these different people. But at the same time, when you're in a conversation where you can actually talk about their work and get a sense of who they are as a person, that can kind of build, like I said, I'm all about building relationships. That's what I am. I am a foreign language specialist. My whole job and my whole life's work up to this point has been to help people get connected to other people and building relationships. And so when we think about, like I said, going back to people of high influence, is that, again, like, it is humbling to be able to recognize, yes, you're doing work, and especially if it's a person who's doing something that you want to do, who's a master, a master at what they do, and just figuring out ways to kind of like talk to them, get to know them, really kind of understand where their mindset is when they create certain, songs or certain albums. Like I remember, because my parents, they host jazz concerts every year in my hometown, and these are Grammy Award winning artists. These are people who have traveled the world and played music. I got to drive Joachim Joyner to from the hotel that he was staying at, that we put him up at, and then to the concert, and then back to the hotel. And I remember like having this conversation with him, being like, yeah, my parents, they run this event, blah, blah, blah. And, I do like jazz. I do like music and whatnot. And we had a conversation about that. And I asked him point blank, what is your process of writing songs? Because I know like in the music industry, it has a It has a tendency where people feel like music you can't build, it's very difficult to build a career out of. So how have you been able to do that and be successful at it? And kind of hearing his response, because it really makes a difference, like the kind of questions you ask, you know, especially when you're asking questions. There's a quote in the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And there's one thing that says, he who holds the question mark controls the conversation. So when you can kind of get people talking about themselves, in Robert Greene's book, The Art of Seduction, where he talks about like the different types of seducers. One of them, for me, I discovered that I am a charmer. And charmers are people who can really make people feel special and make them feel like, wow, I think I can trust this person. This person has a great interest in me. They always listen to me. They're very empathetic. You know, like they're really interested in me. And part of it, so in all of that being said, is that, you know, looking at how you can actually communicate to people, like the main thing is building relationships. You know, I remember someone was telling me, you know, like, because I remember them talking about like Amanda Bynes. And honestly, I don't know Amanda Bynes very well. I just know her because I had a class with her at FITM. And yeah, I mean, I would say like from my interactions with her, she's not, I don't think she's what people are saying that she is in the media. Like I used to say hi to her if I saw her in the labs working. She was always working on homework in the lab, so you really couldn't say that she doesn't do her work or anything like that. She was very, I would say she was very, like she really took initiative with a lot of our projects. She was like the first one to be like, okay, like how are we going to do this assignment? So I really think that like she's very intelligent in her own way. And I was like, I don't really know this person, but the thing is that what happened is, like I said, we're not best friends. We just know each other from a class. I don't, you know, that's just my experience. And I remember telling someone that, and they're like, oh my gosh, you went to school with Amanda. I'm like, you're missing the whole point here. You're missing the whole point, because it's funny, like when I hear people say like, oh, you know, this particular celebrity, like, especially given, like, for example, with Amanda Bynes, there are a lot of things that have been going around about you know, her and her personal life and whatnot. And it's funny, like, when people talk about, like, oh, she's off the deep end or whatever. And I'm like, I don't really see that. That was not my first impression of her. So, you know, again, really, like, looking at the humanity. Because I know, like, a lot of times people will see what they post on Instagram or social media of any kind. They'll see what the news outlets or, like, tabloids or what... I don't know, TMZ or something like that, what people will say about these people. But like I said, the main thing, and going back to my whole purpose, is to put the humanity back into these kinds of situations. If you are a person of influence, and you are aspiring to be a person of interest, of influence, your goal should be to build humane relationships, especially if you get into a room of people who are way beyond your level of experience. They have made so much more of themselves, and you're just starting, you know? So when I look at that, I always feel like, again, like I said, based on what my parents have done, my parents have taught me that, you know, when you're in the room with people who have influence, especially because I know my parents got to meet George Bush when he was president. My parents I think we got invited to a country club for with some friends who are really well known within our city. You know, my parents were used to be members of the Chamber of Commerce, and so when they were doing chamber trips and they had like networking events, they met a lot of people, like, you know, people who were senators, representatives, state, and also as well as for our, you know, for the U.S. as a whole, you know, and then what else? I'm trying to think of what else, you know, yeah, governors. My dad worked for the governor. And so, you know, when you're in these kinds of situations, obviously I'm used to it. Not everyone gets to be in those privileged positions. I understand that. But I think like when you're working towards that, because this is why networking is so important. You have to know how to really be able to network with people to where, you know, you get, like I said, giving the sense of humanity, asking questions, especially if it's a person who is well beyond your years of experience, especially in the field that you want to go in and you want to pursue a career in. So really being able to learn how to ask deep questions, not just surface level questions and like fangirling. And so it's kind of learning how to really take those blinders off and really be able to see the person and really obviously honor what they've done, you know, because like like I told you, if I met Namika, that would be amazing. If I met amazing, you know, especially having that conversation. I know that she can speak English, but also I can speak German, so it'd be kind of like a German English thing going. And so like, of course, in my mind, I would be kind of fangirling, but at the same time, I would basically be, you know, really being able to. What are they doing up there? My neighbor's upstairs. But at the end of the day, you know, it's just really being able to take those blinders off and think of what kinds of things can I ask these people. You know, if you found out you were going to be in the same room as so-and-so, or whoever you admire, what would you ask them? Not like, oh, like, what's your favorite, whatever. You know, like, okay, like what, you know, like deeper questions, really get to a point where you really want to get to the depths of who they are. You know, like I was saying, like, you know, like I said, I would ask her about like her music, like how her family maybe has influenced her music, what goes into your songwriting process, and then kind of like going off of that based off of whatever her answer is, you know, having these kinds of conversations. And yeah, so I hope that really helps you if you kind of are in this kind of position, or you're kind of aspiring to be around people who are beyond your, you know, beyond your level of life and career experience. And I think that this is a great way to kind of get you prepared. Also, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because I know sometimes people can feel like, oh, you know, like, I would love to meet so-and-so, or like, you know, like kind of like in that aspect of, oh, you know, so-and-so. And it's like, no. And I also feel like sometimes like when people kind of like who maybe in those kinds of positions, and sometimes they can kind of play it off as, oh, you know, like I know so-and-so. It's like, no, you don't. You just were in the same room as them. You know, like, is it most of the time, like when my parents produce their jazz concerts, you know, like I said, I do get to meet these artists, and I get to kind of take pictures with them, and, you know, be able to talk to them and whatnot. But, you know, I don't know, like, I'm not going to say, oh yeah, I go hang out with so-and-so all the time. You know, I hang out with Cindy Bradley all the time. No, I don't. I don't. You know, I got to meet, you know, I just got to meet her, and I got to know who she is for that time that I saw her. But remember, we have to remember that people are human, and we should treat people with human beings, like, just like, you know, like you would your best friend. You know, you wouldn't fangirl over your best friend, but, you know, at the same time, you know, you would ask them questions, you'd have conversations. Like if you're on a date with somebody, you're not going to be kind of overzealous about it. You're going to basically be there, ask questions, and get to know who that person is, and decide whether or not you want to be in a relationship with them, you know, and that kind of thing. But in this case, like I said, it's just a matter of just being a human being, you know, so... and I hope, and I think everyone actually who's watching this has the ability to be a person of influence. And I think also as you get older, you kind of learn to be humble, because sometimes we feel like there are people who feel like they're larger than life, and that's a dangerous position to be in, a dangerous mindset. So I really hope this helps you. Like I said, if you are feeling like, you know, like, I don't know, let's say you have a job interview or something, and you're around some, you know, working for your dream company or something like that. I hope that really helps you as well in those scenarios. And yeah, so thank you again, once again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time at the dinner table. Bye.